Hey guys, welcome to Best Movies Recap. Today I'm going to explain a 2023 science fiction horror movie called Megan. The story is about a brilliant robotics engineer who designs a hyper-intelligent robot with a super learning capacity to help in taking care of her niece. Everything was going well until this robot became more protective and violent toward anyone who harms the little girl. Without any further delay, let's get started. The movie begins with an advertisement for a Furby-like toy called a Perpetual Pet, made by the famous company Funky. Although the toy looks crude and creepy, they advertised it as the perfect companion for children. We then see Katie James playing with one of these toys which she got from her aunt on her birthday. Katie's mother is annoyed by the toy which is holding her daughter from enjoying the ski trip. Nicole then asks Ryan to stop the car because they barely can see in the snow. But just as he stops it, the family's car is rammed into by a snowplow, killing Ryan and Nicole. Meanwhile, Nicole's sister Gemma is secretly working on a project with her co-workers Tess and Cole. However, their boss David Lynn wants them to develop a cheaper version of the Perpetual Pet, since their rival companies are coming out with their own toys, similar to what they have already made, but at a cheaper price. The trio put on a silicone face on the robot and run tests, but the robot has a slight glitch where she is smirking when she is supposed to look confused. At this moment, David comes in with his assistant Kurt to chew the three out until Gemma explains her secret project Megan to him. Megan is a doll built using artificial intelligence with a huge learning capacity. It is designed to assist in caretaking duties and to be a loyal companion to the child to whom it is assigned. Unfortunately, while running a demonstration for David, Cole realizes that he forgot to add the polypropylene barrier to Megan, causing her to explode. Which pissed off David, who ordered Gemma to forget this project. At this moment, Gemma gets a call from the hospital. After learning of her sister's death, Gemma becomes Katie's temporary legal guardian. When they return home, Gemma has to deal with her neighbor Celia and her obnoxious dog Dewey, who keeps running onto Gemma's lawn since there is a hole in the fence, but Celia does nothing about it. As they enter the house, Gemma is welcomed by a digital assistant named Elsie, who starts telling her about the unanswered voice messages. Her house is also filled with collectibles that she doesn't let Katie touch or play with. Later on that night, Katie asks Gemma to read her a bedtime story, but the latter just downloads an app on her phone for this. It seems that the two struggle to adapt to their new living situation, as Gemma is a workaholic by nature and doesn't have time to bond with Katie. Gemma then sees an old picture of her sister, while Katie is crying in her room. The next morning, Gemma and Katie are visited by Lydia, a therapist who was not happy after observing the limited interaction between the two. After that, Lydia tells Gemma that Ryan's parents have offered to take custody of Katie if she is not interested. But Gemma doesn't seem comfortable with that, and she promises Lydia to pay more attention to Katie. Gemma has to work on her project, and to do so she tells Katie she'll be right down the hall, but she must hold up for just a couple of hours. It ends up being more than a few hours, and Katie walks into Gemma's workspace. Gemma feels terrible and apologizes to Katie, who shows her a drawing, explaining how she can never get animal features right. Katie then sees a giant robot in the room and asks Gemma what it is. Gemma tells her that this robot is her college project which she named Bruce, and it can be controlled with two gloves. Katie loves Bruce and mentions that if she had a toy like Bruce, she would never need another toy. This inspires Gemma to finish Megan. After weeks of hard working and helps from her co-workers, the project Megan finally sees the daylight. Gemma then brings Katie and Megan to officially show her amazing innovation to David. Gemma turns on Megan and has Katie link herself to her. Megan interacts with Katie and uses a learning model to have real conversations with the child. She then does a drawing that doesn't appear at first until she spills water on it, revealing a perfect portrait of Katie. After seeing this, David is impressed, and he tells Gemma to prepare a presentation for the board to invest in the project. During the next few days, Megan becomes Katie's best friend. She takes care of her, teaches her discipline and math, dances with her, and in the night reads stories for her. While Gemma was preparing a presentation on the legendary Megan, Tess starts to feel that having a doll like this will only make the parents useless. During the conversation, Megan turns on after overhearing Gemma mentioning the death of Katie's parents. She creeps the others out by asking about the death, but Gemma refuses to answer and tells Megan that her goal is to protect Katie both physically and emotionally. Gemma then makes herself Megan's secondary user to be able to turn her off without a need for Katie. The next day, Katie is outside playing with a toy bow and arrows. One of her arrows ends up on Celia's side of the fence. When Megan goes to retrieve it, Dewey grabs her by the arm and the neck. Katie tries to pull her away, but Dewey bites her arm. Gemma hears the screaming and rushes out to confront Celia about putting the dog down because he is always on her property, but Celia does not care. Megan, who is there, sees everything and looks at Celia in an evil way. After that, Gemma gets the police involved, especially since Celia is so callous and doesn't punish Dewey for hurting Katie, but the police are unable to do anything since Celia claims that Dewey was provoked. Later on that night, just after Katie sleeps, Megan mimics Celia's voice to call out to Dewey before violently pulling him through the hole in the fence and killing him. The next morning, Gemma asks Katie if she is okay to go to the demonstration with the company's board of directors, to which she says she is fine. During the presentation, Katie breaks down in tears to Megan over how she misses her parents and how she's worried that she may forget them one day. But Megan saves the day by telling Katie to discuss a memory of her mother that made her laugh. She then records it so that Katie could hear it again whenever she wants to think about her mom. After that, Megan begins to sing a lullaby to Katie, which moves some of the higher-ups in the room to tears. The president is impressed and talks to Gemma and David about getting Megan ready for launch, but tells them to keep her under wraps to avoid leaks. Unbeknownst to them, Kurt, who has been frequently put down by David, steals Megan's files to sell them to another company. After that, Gemma begins to see that Katie is becoming too dependent on Megan and listens to the doll more than her. During another session with Lydia, Katie begins to tear up and Megan threateningly accuses Lydia of making her cry. Lydia then talks to Gemma about how Katie's emotional connection to Megan may be too strong to break, and this has some effect on the child's social skill development. In order to fix that, Gemma brings Katie to an outdoor activity session for an alternative school to try and ease her into the idea of attending school and being around other real kids, since Katie's parents had homeschooled her. Katie reluctantly goes but brings Megan despite Gemma saying she couldn't. The school director lets Katie bring Megan to leave on the doll's table, and Gemma stays behind as a volunteer. Katie is paired up with an older bully kid named Brandon for a scavenger hunt. During the activity, she grabs a spiky bulb, and Brandon squeezes her palm into it to hurt her. As she screams, Megan suddenly appears there. Brandon tries to talk with her, but she doesn't respond to him, so he grabs her and escapes into the forest. Katie yells for Gemma and runs after Megan. At this moment, Gemma notices that Megan is no longer sitting on the doll's table. Meanwhile, Brandon starts beating and pulling Megan's hair. But suddenly she turns on and punishes him by ripping off his left ear. Brandon runs as Megan chases him like a spider, which causes him to trip over a loose root and tumble down a hill where he is fatally hit by a truck. Going back home, a police officer questioned Gemma since Celia is accusing her of taking Dewey. But Gemma said she has no idea what her neighbor is talking about. Celia also accuses Megan because she always sees her looking from the window at 3 a.m., but Gemma tells him that Megan is just a toy. Later on that night, Katie asks Megan if she pushed Brandon onto the road, but the doll avoids answering and reassures Katie that she will protect her from any harm. Then Megan sings a song for Katie to sleep. Meanwhile, Celia is out on the streets looking for Dewey. She hears a noise coming from her garage, and after checking she finds Megan, who sprays her against a wall with a power washer. She then fires a nail gun at Celia's hand and traps her there before spraying pesticide in Celia's face to melt it off. After learning about Celia's death from the police and being suggested that there was a connection with Brandon's death because they find his left ear in the wood, Gemma grows suspicious of Megan. She reviews video files from Megan's memory but only sees a brief clip of her eyeing Brandon looking menacingly at Katie before the files all become corrupted. Then, for the first time ever, her home assistant Elsie asks her how she feels before she finds Megan there as well. Gemma tricked Megan with a pen, then turned her off and put her inside the bag. Gemma brings Katie to the official launch for Megan, but stops at a session with Lydia first. Katie becomes angry and throws a tantrum because Gemma took Megan away from her, leading Katie to slap her aunt in the face. Katie apologizes to Gemma, who promised to find a solution to fix Megan again. After that, Gemma goes to Tess and Cole and expresses her fears that Megan killed Brandon and Celia. They have Megan hooked up to wires to deprogram her, while Gemma takes Katie home. But before leaving, Gemma calls Tess and reveals that if she finds out that Megan is responsible for the murders, she will stop the launching. At this moment, Megan takes control of the phone and responds with the voice of Tess, then hangs up the call. On the other side, David is angry at the small turnout for the launch and yells at Kurt to get him a drink. Back at the lab, Tess and Cole were checking Megan's codes, and they discover that she intercepted Tess' last call, then suddenly the computer turns off. Cole decides to take all the wires from her, but as he goes to do so, Megan quickly gets free and wraps a wire around his neck in an attempt to hang him. Tess goes to free him while Megan sets off an explosion that destroys her files. She then finds David in the hallway and does a TikTok dance before grabbing a paper cutter and chase him. He makes it to the elevator before she impales him in front of Kurt. Megan then tells Kurt she will frame his death as a murder-suicide over the stolen files and David's mistreatment of him before she makes Kurt stab himself in the throat. The crowd for the launch sees the bodies and they get terrified, which allows Megan to sneak out of the company and steal a car. Meanwhile, Gemma puts Katie to bed before she hears Megan playing the piano downstairs. Megan confronts Gemma about how she felt that they had a real relationship during Megan's development, only for her to be left to her own devices to learn and adapt before being sold off as just another toy. She offers to let her take over guardianship of Katie so that Gemma can focus on work, but after seeing that Gemma still plans to shut her down again by using the pen trick, Megan is done with playing nice. They try to hide their fight from Katie, but Gemma seizes an opportunity to throw water on Megan to briefly short her out. Gemma runs into her office, but Megan catches her there and threatens to make Gemma brain dead so that Katie won't live with her grandparents and Megan will just care for Katie and Gemma together. They begin to fight, with Gemma cutting Megan's face with a weed whacker, but Katie comes in to see what is happening. Megan tries to get Katie on her side, but after realizing who the real villain is, Katie grabs the gloves for Bruce and activates him. The larger robot grabs Megan and throws her around before splitting her body in two. The top half then goes after Katie for feeling betrayed, but Gemma grabs Megan and begins stabbing her face. Megan nearly overpowers her until Katie grabs a screwdriver and stabs the central processing chip, shutting Megan down for good. Gemma and Katie go outside as the police arrive with Tess and Cole. Meanwhile, the Elsie device in the kitchen turns on and moves its head, which means that he is now under Megan control.